Hey everybody, DJ Lou here, and on this weekly roundup, we're going to talk about some website redesign that I'm in the middle of, some vinyl that I've picked up recently, and a couple other things. Let's talk about it.
Monday, Tuesday, on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, Saturday.
Alright everybody, before we start the video, please navigate down, hit that subscribe button, make sure you ding that notification bell as well. Also make sure to like the video, and please, if you want to support the channel, head over to my Patreon page and subscribe. Alright everybody, if you see behind me, this is my new prototype for my website. Now, I've had my current site for a little over 5 years now, and I've been very happy with it. But, things do age over time. I've got a lot of just extraneous things, floating around. There's always little tweaks and other things that you want to do with it. And it just ultimately decided, well, it's time for, at least reapproaching the whole thing now. Part of this was because Divi, which is the theme builder that I use that's under WordPress, they have a 4.0 release. They've had it for a little while now, but there are some clear advantages going with it. One of them being that you can now completely template the entire site. Now, everything was technically templated before, but now you have this more global and granular control over things. So, for instance, I can make all my blog posts have a very centric and templated design, just bring my content in, and then if I ever want to make those changes, they're global now. In addition, I can do things like menu changes and all that. As a matter of fact, on the new site, I've been really debating on this new menu system or playing around with some others. I want something a little bit more unique, a little bit more just, oh, hey, what's this? My current one, it's actually pretty cool. I like the way my logo overhangs certain things, but it's definitely time for at least a little bit of refresh. So I'm started this all out and importing things in one by one. So it'll be a little tedious to do, but I want to keep this as super clean and efficient as possible. I've worked really hard for my SEO rankings over the years, so I need to make sure every piece is in line and ready to go. But it's a pretty tedious task when one decides it's time for a redo, but you have a ton of content behind it, and you want to either maybe go for a new total visual change or maybe even just some subtle tweaks. It's still a lot of decision making that needs to be done. Now, beyond my website tweaks, I've spent a little time getting a little bit more vinyl now. People saw that I had my Janet tribute, if you will, of all the vinyl that I've gotten from her from 45s and 12s. And I was actually missing a couple pieces. Now, I picked up some new releases recently, and then I was like, oh, I've got a couple that really needs to be filled in the gaps. One of those happens to be her latest album, Unbreakable. This is a double release. I think it's 180 grams on the vinyl itself. What's interesting with this, there's no track markers on the labels inside. Has a very interesting 4-image perspective of both front and back, and with the covers themselves. But I really actually like some of the releases that came out of this. I, of course, wish that the record labels would promote these great artists even more, but unfortunately, that is kind of the breaks of the game as of late. But it's definitely a good album, especially if you're a Janet fan, to pick up. So the next one up I have here is another Janet album. This is Discipline. This was released just before Unbreakable. It's actually a fairly underrated album. I wouldn't call it quite one of her best, but it's actually a pretty solid offering. But once again, the labels have just not been promoting her nearly as much. And what's really interesting is post Super Bowl, there was actually a concerted effort to remove her off the airwaves and really just kind of diminish her as an artist. So I am going to link that video below. It's actually a really interesting video to watch. But this particular album itself, again, really solid. Again, a double release and worthy of anybody collecting Janet vinyl. Now, the last Janet that I did pick up is Janet. 1984, super solid release. Probably her best album between this and Velvet Rope. I think this probably takes the crown. At least now I have the vinyl release of it. Almost every song on this is just a really solid offering. I've listened to this cover to cover so many times in the past, and now I got the vinyl release. Now, the next two that I picked up were from FYE. I believe they might finally be closed now. I haven't been to the mall in a few days, but this one was a $50 release. This is Lenny Kravitz, Are You Gonna Go My Way? It's a double release, special vinyl, two-tone color release. It's actually, I think 5 is probably his best album, but this is a really solid offering as well. Believe, Are You Gonna Go My Way, of course. Probably my two favorites on it. But really solid, really great looking album. And I know I've listened to this, release on the CD, front to back, at least more than a few times. So definitely worth the replay, and really great photography and everything that's on it. And that's just some of the things that you just don't get nowadays. Just the amount of craft that is put into records, the tactile feel and everything is just, it's part of the reason why I still collect. Now, the last one I picked up is a consolation. Now, this is what I call yacht rock. And Before You Knock, the whole Now series, especially if you're picking up things like vinyl, having multiple hits on a single album, a good compilation, is your ticket to freedom, because it just means less things that you have to lug around. Now, just listen to some of the songs on this. Now, the one that made me buy the album by far was Bobby Caldwell, What You Won't Do for Love. Love that song. I made it a mission last year, after he started recirculating on YouTube, that I wanted to fit this in every event that I could. And lo and behold, I did it in all but one wedding last year. But also Climax Blues Band, Toto, Player, 10cc. I mean, there's so many great songs on this album. This happens to also be a color vinyl release as well, so real nice to look at. Have not listened to it yet, but I'm hoping at least has a great sound for it. But again, if you are actually taking vinyl to gigs every now and then, finding these gems, these nice compilations are going to save your back. And you'll just really appreciate, even when they're like a little bit more of the corny releases like Now can hold some real gems. But other than that, I have a couple open houses coming up. One of them more a pure Q&A kind of thing. The other more kind of hybrid expo kind of Q&A mixed in between. I like these because they're not quote unquote the expos, which is usually just a mill of people kind of coming in and out, and a lot of times they already have all their vendors, or the majority of their vendors, in place. So a lot of times you don't even get the opportunity to talk with them. Most of these people that come to these open houses tend to be more like they're super early. So you do have to kind of cultivate that lead over time. So drip campaigns for situations like this are critical. Keeping your name and your brand in front of their eyes throughout the duration. So by the time that they're ready to select, you've already been in their mind for some time. So I highly recommend, if there are things like open houses that are available in your area, explore those possibilities, because they could really bear some fruit with a little bit more effort than just the simple, hi, hello, conversion, done. This does take a little bit more time, but to me, I think it's actually well worth it. Well, there's this weekly roundup, and I really hope you like this video, and if so, make sure you hit that thumbs up and comment below. Ding that subscribe button, and naturally, if you like videos like this, please check out more of my weekly roundup, my 4 DJs only, and everything else that I throw on this channel. Stay tuned for more.